Before 1941, the last thing on the minds of the average American citizen was going to war. During this pre-war period, the United States had an isolationist view regarding foreign affairs. As a result of the events of World War I, the United States and its citizens didn't feel it was their business to interfere in foreign affairs, and it was agreed just to focus on national issues. Even when news came in about the aggression and atrocities that Hitler and his regime were committing in Europe, the Americans still didn't want to go back to war. Germany, Japan, Italy, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria were all a part of the Axis alliance that was against the United States and the Allies alliance. On December 7, 1941, everything changed. It was on that day that the United States Pacific Fleet base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, was attacked by Japanese suicide kamikazes. Immediately following the attack on Pearl Harbor, anti-war sentiment evaporated and the United States declared war on Japan on December 8, 1941. Shortly after that, on December 11, 1941, Germany declared war on the United States and America needed to prepare quickly. Great Britain, France, the United States, and China all made up the Allies alliance. Alarmed by the swift defeat of one European nation after another, Americans gradually shed their isolationist views. The United States' main allies, Britain and France, were being attacked by Hitler's army, and it was clear to Roosevelt that the United States had to do something to help them. With the public consensus still being to militarily stay out of the war, Roosevelt signed the Lend-Lease Bill into law on March 11, 1941. Roosevelt was able to convince the American people that the country could avoid military action by helping their allies to win. Because most countries involved in the war were broke, especially Britain, the concept of Lend-Lease was to lend rather than sell weapons. Roosevelt was successful in paralleling this concept to the American people by comparing it to lending a neighbor a garden hose to fight a fire. Wartime needs also created a new relationship between science and the United States government. As the government mobilized scientists and engineers for the war effort, they poured millions of dollars into America's most prestigious universities. The purpose of this was for new technologies of war to be developed, such as radar. As a result of many German scientists fleeing the Nazi regime, in 1939, Roosevelt was provided with the information that Germany was working to create an atomic weapon. One of the most important government-sponsored scientific research projects was the Manhattan Project, a secret operation to build an atomic bomb. The government set up a secret community for atomic scientists and their families in Los Alamos, New Mexico. The United States' effort proved to be successful, and in 1942 the bomb was created. The bomb was completed and tested in Alamogordo, New Mexico in July 1945. Although Germany surrendered before the weapon could be used, it proved to be instrumental in winning the war in the Pacific against Japan. In order to maintain public support for the war, in 1942 Roosevelt created the Office of War Information, OWI. This agency of government took charge of domestic propaganda. Movies, war posters, books, and radio were all popular propaganda approaches. Wartime propaganda was so widespread at the time that even today one could recognize the blue-collar woman flexing her muscle, encouraging women to join in the industrial war effort. These images were so prevalent that they have become cultural symbols of that time. It is obvious that the political strategy of propaganda used by the U.S. government worked. It exceedingly influenced the American people that being involved in the war was the right thing to do. Aside from the government having to adjust to war, the economy also played a large role during World War II. As a result of the Lend-Lease program and the military gearing up for war, America's new defense factories required millions of workers to support its round-the-clock operations. In order to fill the void of workers taken away by the military, women, African Americans, Mexican Americans, and poor whites all surged into the jobs at the defense plants. Further, to alleviate racism and promote equal opportunity for all, Roosevelt issued Executive Order No. 8802, which prohibited discrimination in war industries and in the government. It was this order that provided minorities with the job security they needed. As a result of the President's order, more than 1.5 million African Americans migrated from the South to the industrial cities of the North and West during the war. The mobilization of manpower was one of the biggest reshuffling of the United States population ever. With the creation of these new jobs came new economic prosperity. With few consumer goods to buy, the savings rate rose. These savings proved to be instrumental in the post-war United States in helping people to achieve a better lifestyle. The coming of World War II was also the official ending of the Great Depression of the 1920s and 30s. Although Roosevelt's New Deal legislation was improving the economy, it was the war that gave the stock market the jump start it needed. With the growing demand for food and military supplies, America turned into the world's #1 supplier. Everything from uniforms, tanks, ships, planes, and ammunition were all in need and being sold on the world's market. As the demand for resources went up, so did the production going on in American factories. Businesses were transformed from making consumer products into making war supplies almost instantaneously. Companies were able to capitalize on the government's demands and were able to sell more products than ever before. In addition to a jump-started economy, the United States government would still require more funds to support the war effort. The government chose not to finance the war solely through taxation. Instead, the government chose to borrow money in the form of war bonds. A war bond was a loan to the government to help finance the war. In 1941, the U.S. Treasury Department began promoting Series E U.S. savings bonds, or what the government called defense bonds, as a means of income for the country. When the United States finally entered the war and the popularity for these bonds increased, they became better known as war bonds. Both the War Finance Committee and the War Advertising Council worked hard to push the sale of war bonds in America. War bond advertisements were everywhere. There were advertisements in newspapers and magazines, posters, radio announcements, bond rallies hosted by celebrities, and even free movie days at the local theater with any bond purchase. In America, buying bonds wasn't just an investment. It represented one's contribution to the war effort. More than 85 million Americans, half the population, purchased bonds totaling $185.7 billion. It is evident that many Americans did make it a point to do their part in the war effort. The money raised through the war bonds proved to be extremely helpful to the United States government at the time. In addition to political and economic changes, there were also many social changes that occurred during this period. In September 1940, Roosevelt passed into law the Selective Training and Service Act. This would be the first peacetime military draft in American history. The draft required all males between the ages of 21 and 36